Hey everyone, this is Jane with Barlow Herbal, and happy Sunday, June 23rd of 2024. Now this week I had some really interesting thoughts come in after not just my journaling session, but a couple of really good podcasts, one in particular that I listened to. I'm going to talk a little bit about it during today's video, but I'll put a link below. But the basic thought that came through, which was really interesting, is here we are 4 years plus into what put the world into a really different place in 2020. The world looks completely different. We all know it's not going to ever go back to what it was. I know some people are hoping it will, are convinced that it has. Maybe they think it's completely gone back. But for those of us who are on an awakening journey, who maybe saw this from the beginning, who maybe saw it before, all the signs were leading up to it, who maybe have been on a recent awakening journey, realize that things are definitely different. So I have some really interesting thoughts to share about that. About 4 years in, here we are. And then I also had the thought of staying in optimism, but then also the idea of Stoicism. And I know there are many people who study Stoicism, so I'm going to actually just give you a brief what I found about that, because I actually have Ryan Holiday's book of Stoicism, where it's got one thought every day for 365 days, so for a whole year. And that's actually a really good book. I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's Ryan Holiday, and he wrote a book about 365 days of Stoicism. And it's a book I have. And I don't look at it every single day, but I look at it often enough to realize there's some really beautiful messages in Stoicism. So if you wonder what that is, if you're new to this, this is the main belief of Stoicism. Stoicism can be epitomized by three essential beliefs. Number one is that virtue is sufficient for happiness. So just that alone, being virtuous, is sufficient for happiness. Number two is that other so-called goods should be regarded with indifference. Okay, so that one is interesting. That kind of piggybacked off of my thoughts from last week about remaining, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. So this is remaining indifferent. You get to, something happens. It's not saying don't be completely unemotional, but, and then let me finish. And then number three is that the world is providentially ordered by God, okay? So then it's basically, what is a Stoic mindset? So I'm going to read this. Stoicism is focusing on things that are in your control, overcoming negative emotions, living in the present moment, helping others for the common good, and finding opportunity in every obstacle. I think that basically ties everything up. And what, Stoicism in a perfect description. So I'm going to read this again. Stoicism is focusing on things that are in your control, overcoming negative emotions, living in the present moment, helping others for the common good, and finding opportunities in every obstacle. Okay? That one is awesome. In fact, one of the things that I love really about the main message that I've taken from Stoicism is not to stress out and overthink over the things that you can't control. Because there are things that all of us, every one of us, there are things that we can't control. So I think, staying out of a negative mindset, having a certain amount of indifference, and then focusing on the things you can control, service to others, and the fact that virtue is all you need for happiness is a really interesting thought, right? So I want to just kind of go through some of the notes that I wrote this week. I think, let's see what flows out after them. So what I kind of wrote at the top here is, 4 years in, where are we as a collective, as a group of people, all over the whole world, groups of people, where is our mindset? And then staying more optimistic and possibly looking at the world with more of a Stoicism type of a thought process. So here's what kind of came through. Out of sight doesn't mean out of mind. That means what I believe is all of the things that are happening, that happened and 2020 went down, all the things that, happened and are still coming out, which is kind of crazy to think that many people still can't see it. I think it's painful to wake up. It's painful to see. But these things have been going on for decades. So out of sight doesn't mean out of mind. I think that we want so bad for things to go back to normal. And first of all, we need to know things are not going back to what we quote was normal. And the interview that I listened to this week was a BBC documentary maker, very popular. Many of you probably are familiar with him. He's a Scottish man named Neil Oliver, and he was interviewed on a podcast this week. I'll put a link below to the podcast. It was a powerful 2-hour podcast where the host let him do most of the talking, which was a really beautiful thing when you have a podcast host who doesn't have to always interject, but can really let the person they interview, who has so much to say many times, and it's all so amazing, they let them talk and let them share their ideas, and they ask questions at exactly the right time. But his story is of how he knew from the beginning, but felt like he was in a bit of a slumber, is a very powerful story. And I'd seen him before, but I really didn't know who he was. But it was a very powerful interview, and I would suggest if you have the time to listen to it or watch it, that you do so. So out of sight doesn't mean out of mind. And I believe what I wrote here after this is I believe we need to take seriously the idea of personal responsibility. We can't be a victim. We can't dive into victim mentality. It doesn't serve us. It doesn't serve our fellow humans. It doesn't serve what we're trying to accomplish in the world, right? It doesn't serve any of that. Protecting our energetic frequency seems like it's extra important. In fact, what prompted that one is on Friday, I took my 10-year-old niece to go birthday shopping. So I have 4 little kids who are almost like my grandkids. So my grandkids are almost 11 and 13. And my sister, my youngest sister, she's almost 20 years younger than me. She has 2 little kids that are now 10 and 12. So my grandkids and my nieces are exactly the same age. And so what I've developed over these last few years is a little tradition where on their birthdays individually, these four beautiful little kids, I take them out for one-on-one shopping, and they get to pick where they go. We will have some food, whether it's lunch or a little dinner. And on Thursday, one of my nieces turned 10. So on Friday, just the two of us, we went out and we did birthday shopping. And one of the things that she wanted to do was go to the mall. Now, I am not a fan of the mall. And let me just say, I'm not a fan of shopping, period. I've never liked it. I mean, that's why I'll find a pair of pants I like. I'll buy like 6 pairs at the same, and then I'll wear them for 10 years. I mean, I am just a person who, I'm just not a fan of shopping. And I know some people love it and they find a lot of joy in it. So this is not anything about that. But we went into the mall, me and my 10-year-old niece. And there was a lot of stores. There was a 2-story mall, and we walked around the top section. We went down the escalator and we walked around the bottom section, and she got a little hungry, so we went back to the top and we went to the food court and got her a little slice of pizza. And it was an interesting thing to be in the mall. So I wrote down here is protecting our energetic frequency. I feel like there's so low vibe in there. And my best way to describe it is it felt like there's just not, I didn't see a lot of joy. The people eating in the food court I guess I'm so in tune to the frequencies that, I did have fun with my niece, and she was, talk about full of joy. This little girl was totally full of joy. But I couldn't really wait to get out of the mall because it was a low frequency place. And even the people in the different stores that we interacted with, the cashiers, and there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm, and there was it's hard to describe. And I'm sure that there are other malls that have higher vibes, but the particular one that we went into just didn't. So what I did, this was Friday night that we went. So what I did the next morning, which was yesterday morning, Saturday, is like, okay, I feel like I need some extra grounding. So what and this is just me practicing what I preach, getting out, going on the grass, especially with this weather so perfect. We just had the longest day of the year, so we've got early sunlight. We get sunlight and sunsets late. It's like, this is my favorite time of year here in Utah. It's just, the weather is nice even early in the morning. I can get up and go walking, and I can go hiking early, and it's amazing. So what I did is I took this journal. I went out early yesterday morning, and I have this place in my front yard that's got a little stone bench with a little Japanese maple in it. And it's a stone planter, and it's got the Japanese maple in it. And I actually sat on the front of this and put my feet in the grass, and I had my journal, and I had a pen, and I put my feet in the grass, and I just kind of sat there. And it was, the air was quiet. Saturday morning, so I had not asked myself this in a long time, but I said, what does my higher self want to tell me today? And the very first thing I got was just simply listen. Just listen to what's around you. And all of a sudden it became kind of noisy because there were tons of birds. I could hear the traffic, even though I'm in Salt Lake. I'm in a suburb of Salt Lake. But there's places, when you go into my neighborhood, the street is quiet. It's a cul-de-sac. It's an end of a street. It's actually awesome. But I can hear traffic on the busier streets. And not too far from me is a freeway. And so I listened, and not only was there so many birds, the chirping, the noise from the birds, there's a ton of baby nests all over, because we have a lot of trees and a lot of greenery in our yard, so we attract a ton of birds. And you can hear the mama birds chirping, you can hear baby birds. We know there's nests all over our yard. So there was tons of birds, there was traffic, and then I could hear an airplane, because Salt Lake City has a major international airport, and you can hear the planes go in, and we also have, not too far from us, a Air Force base, and sometimes you can hear jets, fighter jets go by, and they do practices, and so here I am early yesterday morning with my feet in the grass, my journal open, asking my higher self, what do you want to tell me today? And the first thing that dropped in was simply listen. And so what felt like it was quiet for a minute, because I was all of a sudden paying attention, it became vibrant. And it wasn't in an annoying kind of way with all the sounds. It was simply, we tune these things out, and I think we miss so many things. So these are some thoughts that started to drop in. First, I was thinking about this interview that I listened to with Neil Oliver, and his experience of the past 4 years, and one of the things that everything he said was so resonated with if you want to know how I felt about the pandemic and what happened during 2020 and the years since, listen to this interview, because every single thing that he talks about, I resonate with 100%. And I sent the interview immediately to one of my sisters, and I said, "Oh, you need to watch this. It's really good." And after she did, she called, and I had just started my walk, and we talked about it for an hour and a half, and it was just this pleasant thing. So one of the things that really came through that resonated with me, and I've said this to you before, that I'm actually really grateful for what happened in 2020, because it has led to the Great Awakening. And it might be painful at first, but what happens is when you come through it and you get to the other side of, this is where Stoicism comes in, right? And where you focus on what you can control rather than focusing on what you can't control. But what happens is then you get to have gratefulness, and you get to live in optimism, which is the human spirit. And this is one thing he really talked about that was so beautiful. So here's what I wrote after that. Coming out the other side, having a knowing and a realizing. You gain a deep knowing about the things that you realize are happening in the world and our own part in it, and it gives you an empowerment. Okay, so the things that you come out with are the fact that we've been lied to for centuries. The hard truths are startling and jarring. And it's really true, I mean, these are things that, my dad was so far ahead of his time, not just with plant medicine, but with the things that he taught us, the things about the government and things about politicians and all of that stuff. My dad was so far ahead. And in fact, one of the things that me and my sister talked about was, how did Dad know this stuff? She actually said, I wish I could go back and talk to Dad and be like, how did you know? Like, how did you know this stuff? Because our dad passed away 26 years ago. And, this is a sister who's a year older than me. So we're both in our 60s. And it's like, all those years ago when we were growing up, 50 years ago when we were 10 and we were, 13, my dad was telling us these things. And he wasn't, telling us these hardcore, but he was dropping stuff just as he was raising us. And I think that that's why that we responded during 2020 the way we did, is because we had this mild awakening just in our growing up. So coming out the other side of knowing or realizing that we've been lied to for centuries, the hard truths are startling and jarring. This is what I wrote. And then I wrote, then you reach the other side and you realize the human spirit of optimism. And that's what this Neil Oliver really brought in for me is, staying optimistic is such a beautiful thing. Because I will tell you, I do believe that whoever they are, the nameless, faceless, entities, powers that are controlling, what goes on in the world, the endless wars, all of this stuff, they don't want us to be optimistic. They don't want us to stand together, regardless of our differences in beliefs. And, we can believe differently, but we need to stand together. And staying in the spirit of optimism and love and high frequency, this is where it's at, okay? So what we need to do is here's what I wrote. How do we navigate the people who have to stay in our lives? Because this becomes a hard thing for me. And this is as I'm writing my thoughts. And believe differently than we do. Or maybe a better way to put it is who won't look at the world, who won't look at it. Because I do think it is startling and jarring, and then you reach the other side and you realize certain things, that these things have always been there. And thank God I now know. Thank God I'm awake, right? So I'm always asking, what are my lessons? I'm always saying, I'm grateful for the growth. So I wrote that because I'm like, okay, at what point do I just say, okay, this hard thing, I get to look at it indifferent. I get to be indifferent about it. And I know I touched on this last week, but things that I'm stressing about, where I think other people are controlling the things that I can do and say and all that, they're not even thinking about me at all. So I get to learn to be more of a stoic. I get to be a little bit indifferent. I'm not saying to stop being loving, stop being optimistic. I'm saying quite the opposite. When we can be indifferent about the things we can't control, I think everything changes. So I wrote this in parentheses, and I kind of put a big circle around it because I wasn't sure if I was going to share this, but this is very short. When do I get to just be happy? Be who I am, be who I was meant to be. Sometimes I ask myself that because I live in this constant state when I'm not doing my meditating, I'm not doing my walking, I'm not doing my grounding. That doesn't take up the majority of my day. The majority of my day is, thank heavens I have a beautiful platform and a beautiful company that I get to nurture and grow and hold so dear to my heart and put love into everything I do. I thank God every day for that because it gives me purpose. It gives my life meaning. I'm so, so grateful. So then this is where this comes in, where I just go, okay, I'm going to be indifferent about this. I'm not going to stop being proactive. I'm not going to give it my attention when it needs it, but then I'm going to be indifferent about it. That's a great place to come to. So then I wrote this. I need to stay in service to others. I need to stay in creation. I need to remember and know that I am loved by God and that I am a part of God. I'm a part of God. I say this so often because so often we forget as we get caught in this dense planet, right? With all the things happening. And then I wrote this, but oh wow, did I really choose this much hard stuff? I always say, we think about the fact that our souls, there are billions and billions and trillions of consciousness and souls who wanted to come down and experience this amazing human life. We get these experiences because we have this body, right? We have this amazing physical body. And this is our vehicle to experience. And we were jumping up and down and couldn't wait to come down here. But oh wow, did I really choose this much hard stuff? Because it sometimes you just kind of go, I mean, it gets so unbearable for so many humans that they end this life. They end their life. This is how unbearable it gets. And I just don't believe it doesn't have to be that way to the point where people end their life. I've shared with you before, it just passed 3 years that I lost a young 19-year-old nephew to suicide. At what point do these beautiful young human beings not realize that this life is worth living? And I really bring myself back to a place of gratitude and loving, So let's see. Did I really choose this much hard stuff? You start to realize it's not the material things that bring happiness at all. This is all this stuff that I wrote down while I was sitting in my front yard yesterday with my feet in the grass. I thought I was sitting in quiet. It felt like quiet for a minute until I was told to listen. And then all of a sudden it got noisy with just the sounds that are there that we block out. And I realized, I am so blessed. I have a beautiful home. I have a beautiful yard. My husband and I both love to work in the yard and take care of the plants and the flowers and the vegetables. And we both love being out with our hands in the dirt, taking care of our yard. And, the age I am, I've worked really hard. My husband and I have both worked really hard. We've been, careful with our money. We've done our best to stay out of debt and all of that. And I look around and I think of how grateful I am that I get to live where I live. And then I realize that even though this is beautiful and my life this is real amazing abundance, I would be even happy with less because I have my health, I have my family, I have my grandkids, I have my purpose. I would still be happy without the material things. And you really start to realize that that's where the true happiness is. That is really where happiness lives. And I'm not saying that I'm not grateful for the things that I do have. I'm beyond grateful. In fact, I realize that I live in an amazing place during an amazing time, and it's been a gift. It's been a gift. So So after I wrote that, we start to realize it's not the material things that bring happiness at all. We all want food, shelter, comfort, and basic needs. This, for if we could just make sure everybody, there's enough abundance for everybody. There are enough resources for all human beings to have their basic needs met. I believe that from the very depths of my heart. I yes, that's what I believe. And then, but then, simple human joys: family who loves and respects you, peace and knowing, constantly learning about the universe. These are the simple human joys that I get. If I really, look at it: family who loves and respects me, peace and knowing. Having a knowing gives me so much peace because I know it resonates deep in my soul when I learn things about what are happening in the world. It gives me peace because then I feel like I can prepare and I can protect. And that's what we want. We want safety. And I think that's why many people are so willing, so fast to give up their freedom and their sovereignty, is for safety. And the powers that be know that about us, right? And then constantly you're learning about the universe. That piece I love. I love learning about quantum physics and quantum entanglement and the idea of aliens and the idea of a galactic federation. And my mind is open to all possibilities. My mind is open to all of that. I love learning about anything. And I'm not saying I take and absorb and believe absolutely everything. I'm saying that to me, learning about the unlimited possibilities that are out there in this amazing universe that we get to occupy is super fun for me. I think about the people who have passed on. Imagine what their souls and their consciousness would do differently. This is where I was having that conversation with my sister, and we talked. She said, I really wish I could talk to my dad. And it's like, what I try to do is I try to put myself in a position is when my consciousness, my soul has transitioned into the afterlife, to the next life, wherever that looks like. I don't ever want to go, oh, darn it. I wish I would have done that different. Why didn't I have more fun? Why didn't I try to make a difference in this person's life or that person's life? Or, I really want to go, yeah, that was fun. That was fun. So I think that's very interesting, right? So then I wrote this down. About a month ago, I had a beautiful, pivotal, facilitated plant medicine journey with a beautiful girl who lives here in Salt Lake. And she works with a company it's a medical company, but they call it, I think it's called Transcendence Mental Health. But it's a medical doctor and was awakened during 2020. And it was a beautiful facilitated plant medicine journey. There was deep intention that went in. And I just felt like I needed to have a higher guidance and a higher perspective from, of course, guidance from myself. But the interesting thing is my Native American sister who had passed away, and I've brought her up before, she came into this journey, and she grew up as my age. She was 4 years old when she was adopted with her 3-year-old sister and her 2-year-old brother, and I was 4. So we grew up together, and she kind of went out of the house when she was still a teenager, kind of went off onto an alcoholic drug path and ended up passing away when she was 29. And she would be my age now. She would be 63. And I hadn't actually thought about her for a really long time. And she came into my journey. And it was such a beautiful thing because she told me that if she would have lived, she would, and if the world had not been changed by all the settlers that came in and into America, that she would have been a sought after medicine woman for her tribe, which is the Eastern Shoshone Native American tribe. And she chose our family to come to because my dad was a botanist. And so there was just this beautiful, it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. So as I was in my quiet yard yesterday, I had my journal open, she dropped it back into me, and she just reminded me of all the things that we had talked about when I was in my journey. And basically, this is what I wrote after that. Live moving forward as a stoic, loving, powerful bringer of plant medicine to the people. And so she was basically saying, like, I had this vision of her in my mind this morning, because she was full-blooded Native American, and my other brother and sister, they're still around and still alive, and gorgeous human beings, just gorgeous human beings. And I saw this vision of my sister who had passed on. Her name is Wanda, and she said, she looked, she would have been 63, so she had this gray black hair, a long braid going down her back. She had, I could just envision this is how she would be. She was wrapped in a Native American, some type of blanket, and she was sitting cross-legged, and she was surrounded by herbs and herbal remedies, and it was just the most beautiful thing. In fact, one of the things that she said to me in my journey is that I'm a bridge between indigenous plant medicine, indigenous people, not just in the Americas, but think about all over the world, all the indigenous people who hold these deep treasures of knowledge about plants, plant medicine, how they heal us, how they were put on earth and carried down generation to generation to generation. The medicine man would train his son, and his son would grow up, become a medicine man, and train his son or his daughter. This is how human beings have stayed connected to Mother Earth, have taken care of themselves, and modern medicine and all the modern things have tried to wipe this away and wipe this out and prosecute those who use this. So let me finish what I wrote. In fact, let me read that again. Live moving forward as a stoic, loving, powerful bringer of plant medicine to the people. She kind of came into my brain yesterday morning, and that's what I wrote. Use your platform to focus on healing, and deep knowledge. So, it kind of regrounded me. These journaling sessions that I have, where I truly sit with myself and ask, what does my higher self want to tell me? I believe I'm not only tapping into my own higher wisdom, my intuitive wisdom, I believe I'm tapping into that piece of me that is connected to God's source. And I know that all of us have that. We all have the ability to connect to this. This is a little reminder of last week's video at the end, where I talked about the pineal gland and how important it is to decalcify and make sure that gland is clean and decalcified, and it's our connection to our consciousness. It sits in the center of our brain. So if you didn't see that, go watch the last 15 minutes or so of last week's video. So I wrote this: keep doing what you're doing. Number 1, follow your intuition. Stay connected to the divine for guidance. Ask for protection. Don't forget that I can ask. Send up a prayer. Prayers are powerful. Put out that quantum entanglement. Put it out. During this whole last 6 months, we've had so many people send us prayers and send us love, and I will tell you, every single one of them was felt, and so grateful for. Ask for protection. Use care when you speak. And these are things that are coming through again as I'm connecting with my sister. Let people you love have their own journey without taking it personally. Okay, so I'm going to read this small list again. Keep doing what you're doing. Follow your intuition. Stay connected to the divine for guidance. Ask for protection. Use care when you speak. Let people you love have their own journey without taking it personally. This one is something that I constantly have to work on, partly because I have such a huge group of people who are my family. And I love them. I love every one of them. And the people that are the closest to me, that I love the deepest, sometimes can cause me the most pain. And I need to let them have their own journey. This is where Stoicism comes in, right? So here's what I wrote. To end with, to talk about the missing piece is not about being perfect. It's not about being perfect. That seems to be the missing piece, right? The fear of not being perfect. Okay, so the reason I wrote this is this. Okay, this is kind of, so earlier this week, my friend Chris Wark, who has a big platform, it's called Chris Beat Cancer. He beat stage 4, I believe it was, I want to say colon cancer, over 20 years ago. He has a beautiful, beautiful platform, and he is making a huge impact in the world. And I don't talk to him very often. I see him, at a conference here and there. But 5 years ago, he interviewed me, and it was on his YouTube channel. And it's still on there. In fact, it lives, I added it to a playlist on my YouTube channel. And I'll put a link below this video for that. But someone in his marketing team took a little clip from our interview this week, and he posted it on his Instagram. Now, he has a huge following because his message is not just of healing from cancer naturally using plants and juicing and all of that. His platform is very much God-based. It's based on forgiveness. It's based on love. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful platform. So the reason I bring this up is because I feel like there's such a missing piece of the puzzle to our health as far as taking care of this physical body. If we stay in fear, fear alone can create disease. If we stay in a place of non-forgiveness, that alone can create disease. Or if we release the fear and we live in full forgiveness, not just of others, but for ourselves, we can literally release disease. And I've seen it because what we believe, our mind is extremely powerful. There's a beautiful book by Dr. Bruce Lipton called The Biology of Belief. It's one of my favorites. And then Dr. David Hawkins, Power versus Force, and Healing and Recovery, also by Dr. David Hawkins. When you start to realize the power that you have over the health or lack of it that your body expresses, you start to realize some really beautiful things. And I think what happens is we live in fear that we're not doing things perfectly. And I find this with people who are healing from things like cancer. Because one of the things that this brought up is a lot of people underneath this video started asking about, well, what about the alcohol in tinctures? Because I talk about tinctures, and tinctures are made using the extraction technique of alcohol. And if you think about it, there's many platforms, and I'm a person who now I don't drink anymore. I used to drink wine on a pretty regular basis, but I'm 100% sober from wine, and it's been probably 7 or 8 months now. But I still do herbal tinctures that have alcohol. And I think some of the comments underneath this little clip that got released this week talked about, well, doesn't the alcohol in tinctures, should you not take it because that causes cancer? And here's the thing. I think this is where I need to bring this down to, is when we are in fear that we're not doing something perfectly. Okay, I'm going to take this group of powerful herbs that's been put into this tincture. Sometimes you need alcohol to pull all the medicinal properties out of the plant. Some plants require that. And then what happens is the alcohol acts as a preservative. Now it can preserve all of those amazing medicinal properties in that tincture. And then if it sits on your shelf for 6 months before you take it, if it sits on your shelf for 2 years before you finish it, or whatever the situation may be, a shelf life of a tincture is, from my perspective, especially the way we do our tinctures, is indefinite. Those properties are literally suspended in the alcohol. And if there's no water or glycerin added, the shelf life is very long. So that is a huge benefit. And then think about this. When you have an herbal tincture, the alcohol, it's only a tiny bit, maybe 25 drops. What if you do 50 drops? Maybe you need a higher dose, 50 drops. When you take that into your biology, that alcohol carries all those herbs and all their powerful benefits directly to the bloodstream, where it can go right to work. So if we are stressing about the perfection of what we heard about this and what we heard about that, and I know there are people who are sensitive to alcohol and can't do it, and I'm not talking about those people. I am talking about in general. We need to live in a place of, we are here, our mindset matters, our belief systems matter. Everything that we bring to the table with all of those things makes a difference in our biology. In fact, there's a beautiful book by Anita Moorjani called Dying to Be Me. And she died of, I believe it was pancreatic cancer, might have been ovarian cancer, I don't remember, but she literally died. She had a near-death experience. She was 80 pounds, and her consciousness left her body, and she saw what created her cancer, and it was her belief systems. And so she had the opportunity to go back into her body. She did. Within 5 weeks, she had lemon-sized tumors all over her body that shrank and dissolved on their own. She was released from the hospital, miraculous healing, and she's still alive today and talking about it. Our belief systems are powerful, and I think that this is the hardest thing for us to wrap our head around. So that's a whole lot to unpack, right? And maybe I'll continue on this vein next week. In fact, I'll put the names of all these things I just talked about at the end here underneath this video, because to me, learning and expanding, this goes to expanding your knowledge of the universe. What do we know? What have we been lied about? What are the things that have been kept from us? And then what I say is this: when you get new information, let it resonate, let it sit with you. There might be things you can toss out. It might not sit with you. But I would say be really honest with the information that you take in. Super honest. Be honest with yourself about what you listen to and how does it fall. Do you have a preconceived notion of someone or something that's blocking you from seeing the truth? Because I think that's common with all of us. So that is a lot to unpack. Almost 43 minutes in. So, all right, 4 years in, how are you feeling? How are you doing? I would love for you to take a listen to Neil Oliver's interview, the one that's below this. And, I would love to hear what you think about it. I think there's some people in the world who maybe aren't ready to hear that. But the thing is, he says it so beautifully, and there's no aggression. He has come to a place of optimism and just love. And this is why I believe this interview resonated with me, is because that's the place that I want to land 100%. I think I'm almost there, but it's something I work out. I work out on a daily basis. So I thank you guys for listening today. I hope you have a brilliant rest of your Sunday if you're listening to this on Sunday. I hope you have a wonderful last week of June of 2024. And then here we go, ready or not, into the second half of 2024. It's going to be a wild ride. The first half has been a wild ride, but as we move through this crazy political upheaval of a year here in the U.S. especially, I think we're in for a fun ride. That's how we need to look at it, right? That's the stoic part of us, where we get to have a certain amount of indifference, especially for things we can't control. So I hope you have a beautiful week, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.